So Marcella has been with us in Peace Village since almost a month now, I think, and she will be leaving soon, tomorrow, back to Dallas. Marcella began her studies in violin at the age of 6 in Costa Rica, and later on continued with viola, another instrument in the strings family. She continued her studies of music in Mexico, finishing her master's degree in Holland. Currently, she lives in Arlington, Texas, where she teaches music in addition to participating in different ensembles and orchestras. Marcella herself has participated in chamber music recitals, symphonic concerts, and music festivals in France, Switzerland, Spain, and United States, Mexico, and Costa Rica. With the Brahma Kumaris, she has had the fortune to play live meditations, talks, and live retreats in India, different parts of Latin America, and Europe, sharing the stage with various musicians and artists from different corners of the world. She has a very sweet presence and gentle nature, you must have noticed while she was playing. So thank you to Marcella for such a beautiful recital for us. So before we start, just to know if anybody is visiting Peace Village for the first time. Is there anybody? Okay, extra special warm welcome to you. Today the program is, of course, with Brother Charlie, who's come from Australia, and you'll get to know more about him a bit later. But the program itself will begin with a conversation with Brother Charlie and Sister Judy, who is a resident here. And I will introduce Sister Judy right now with you. So Judy Rogers, we call Sister Judy with affection, is a resident of Peace Village and was working in media when she turned her attention to a study of consciousness and meditation about 30 years back. And she held executive positions in several media companies, post which she formed her own media consulting company. Her interest in Raj Yoga meditation, as taught by the Brahma Kumaris, led to an extended study of consciousness and applied spirituality on how the quality of our awareness affects our thoughts, vision, and experience in the world. So, thank you, Sister Judy, for doing this conversation with Brother Charlie. Also, I would like to introduce Claudia, who's a key team member for today's program. She has been the most recent addition to our Peace Village family. She started residing about a couple of months back. Yeah, April onwards. And she's also working as a researcher, and she helps with a lot of our programs here in Brahma Kumaris. So thank you, Sister Claudia. So now just brief over what we all are in for together this evening. So after the conversation with Brother Charlie and Sister Judy, we will have a Q&A session. So you all are encouraged to ask your questions, and then some reflection and interaction engagement, which Sister Claudia would be leading. Then there will be a guided meditation by Brother Charlie, and then we finish with what we call Toli and blessings, right? A nice farewell to all of you, a sweet farewell, and you'll learn more about it a bit later. So before I call on Sister Judy and Brother Charlie on the stage, we would just get to know a little bit more about Brahma Kumaris through a short video.
Welcome to the Brahma Kumaris, where a new world is opened up for you. From humble beginnings in India in 1936 to a global organization with over 8,000 centers in 110 countries and 1 million students worldwide. Through their tireless commitment, passionate heart, and determined spirit, the Brahma Kumaris arrived in America in 1974 and have since grown to 35 main centers throughout America. There are also 2 residential retreat centers, Peace Village, located in upstate New York, and Anubhuti, located in Novato, California.
I want to just share a little bit about how the centers of Raj Yoga meditation began in United States. Actually, I was in Caribbean islands and I got invitation from New York that we want to start something about meditation. And it was in 1978 I came here and we rented a very small apartment in Astoria. And from there I found that a lot of people have interest. I realized that there is so much need, and from there onwards then centers started in many other states.
Our centers are safe spaces where you can explore the power of your inner world.
The classes are conducted in many homes, many cities, all over across the United States. A lot of people, they learn meditation, they use it, that meditation, at their workplace, in their family, and also I find that children, young adults, because they are so much into like what really is the life about.
The Brahma Kumaris are dedicated to personal and global transformation through the study and spiritual practice of Raj Yoga meditation. And at the heart of our teaching is the belief that the pathway to peace and happiness is to remember our original nature as spiritual beings connected to the one source. In 1981, the organization received recognition as an international non-governmental organization affiliated with the United Nations and accredited with general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council. From organizing large-scale global initiatives to local community programs, the Brahma Kumaris has a tradition of service in every field that fosters spiritual growth among individuals from all backgrounds, cultures, and walks of life.
I hold on to this vision, the world of love, world of peace and harmony, world which is free from conflict and sorrow, where we can live as brothers, one family, children of common parents, one supreme divine power.
This is your invitation to awaken and join us in creating a world of love, peace, and kindness. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Can you hear me okay? So hello, friends. I look around this audience and I see a room full of friends. So thank you for coming together this evening to talk about love with the world expert on love. I went up to Kanu, I said, weren't you supposed to introduce Charlie? And she said, no, you're doing that. So how many of you have already heard a talk with Charlie at some point here at Peace Village or somewhere? Okay, so let me just tell the rest of you about this wonderful brother. So Charlie Hogg he's from Australia, lives in Sydney, and it was really one of the very first Westerners to find Raja Yoga when he was in London, traveling as a young, were you a hippie, Charlie?
Sort of.
A young sort of hippie. Probably had a lot of hair.
A lot of hair.
And he recognized right away. He had been searching in many places and in many traditions, and he may tell you about that. But when he heard this, he recognized that this was something he needed to know more about. And the rest, as they say, is history. He's a meditator with 47 years of experience. And not only is he wise, but he's very, very kind. And he is beloved in the Brahma Kumaris community for having a big heart and lots of humility. So I think you'll see that this evening as we chat. We're talking about love, something that everybody knows a lot about, right? So I'm going to ask you some questions, Charlie. And if you don't like the question I'm asking you, you answer a different one. Okay? So let's start with sort of the simple stuff. And I can't really see you so well through these flowers.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So Charlie, let's start with something simple, which is, what is true love?
To sound a little bit philosophical, I'd just like to say it's so lovely to be here. So lovely to be in this beautiful gathering. And I've been here for 5 days now, which has been just a delight. And had a wonderful event, which just finished this morning. You know, perhaps in a very philosophical way, I would say that true love is to love that which always exists. And the way that we've all been brought up is that we yearn for an experience of love, a quality of love that I feel we all have deep inside in our memory. And we begin to love each other, but the complications that develop because maybe I attach my heart to people. And the sort of the law of life says the more I depend on others, sometimes that is a wonderful sense of security. But at other times, I have a fear, a huge fear develops in life of losing that which I love. And that's why I think the spiritual journey is an extraordinary journey towards an authentic, true love. Because I'm starting to create a foundation of love based on a relationship with God, which is the only relationship that's permanent, and reframing the relationship with myself. And I often feel when those two elements are together, this relationship with God, a loving relationship with myself, I have the capacity to offer love to everybody. And to me, that probably defines the most beautiful life, a life full of sharing of love. But I sometimes feel we almost need a re-education of how to love accurately, because we all need it. And yet somehow the complication we all know in relationships at the moment is profound. And so sometimes there's love and sometimes there's the opposite. There's so much deep pain and hurt. It's only when we know that we know how deep that pain and hurt can be.
So let me ask you about something that sometimes happens in love, which is disappointment, right? We've all had that happen. Either we're disappointed with someone we love, or we realize that we are disappointing them. What do we do when that happens? I mean, how do we reset if we find that we're in a kind of a tangle of disappointment. Can you hear this, Mike? Is it all right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what happens is that with all the right intentions, fundamentally today we feel empty. There's an emptiness spiritually. And so it's not a conscious thing, but unconsciously I position a relationship that you love me. So it's a selfish orientation. And so I have this sort of expectation that you will love me. And if you don't offer a quality of love for me that I feel I need, I feel disappointed. And unfortunately, some people permanently feel disappointed in others. It's a permanent state of being, not realizing it's not the other, it's fundamentally me. Because I think the nature of life today, when we lose our spiritual power, there's this massive vacuum inside. And the culture has taught us that it will be filled from outside. To me, that's the ultimate myth of our modern culture, that peace, love, and happiness is out there. So I'm permanently, externally looking out there. And the absolute beauty of spirituality is to understand that it's all here if I know how to access it. It's just, and the more you feel full here, you can offer love to others. And if others love you back, it's great. And usually they do. But if they don't, it's okay. Actually, it's life. And so I take myself out of this cycle of disappointments, this chronic cycle of expectation and disappointment.
Is it possible to love too much?
I don't know. What does everyone feel? In a dependent way, sometimes, I think that we can, try. Sometimes there's the feeling I'm giving so much and they don't give me much back. I'm so loving, I'm so caring, I'm always out there trying to support and they don't really. I think in that context, yes, in a sense that, once again, it's the same thing. I have massive expectations about how you should respond. And once again, I keep coming back to spirituality, that in a sense, spirituality, my source of love is completely different. I go to God first. And when I'm able to fill with God's love, then, I'm able to give love and receive love with less and less expectation. Nothing happens overnight. But I think it's the foundation, actually, of building sustainable relationships with others, because I have less attachment to an outcome that you should love me and you should love me in this particular way. And you're not doing it and it's just not right. And I feel empty and I feel unhappy. But when I feel God's love, I will love. And I'm not so attached to an outcome that you need to respond to me according to how I feel in that way.
So if we were going to do a little check on some relationship in our lives, and we were going to check whether it's love or attachment, what would we check?
I think the more, there's pure love, I would say, whether people respond to me well or not, I'm okay, because I'm already full. That's my relationship with God. Maybe I'm talking at quite a high level here because it's a journey. But the more I'm attached to people, the more they affect me. That's the law of life. So when I'm attached and they're really sweet, it's just so lovely. But if they don't fulfill my expectations, or they're a little sharp with me, or they ignore me, I take an incredible amount of sorrow. So the closest relationships, I'm in this incredible game of give and take of sorrow. One day it's happiness, the next day it's sorrow. 1 hour it's happiness, the next hour it's sorrow. 1 minute it's happiness, it's this. And it builds an incredible sort of insecurity in me around relationships, because sometimes I think the human soul, the nutrient of the human soul is love and belonging. And if that nutrient isn't supplied on a regular basis, I don't think we think properly. And my perception of reality is completely distorted in a way. And so when the nutrient's not coming, we tend to blame that one. We put the onus on the one who's not supplying me with the nutrients I feel they should be, rather than realizing it's fundamentally all about me and the way I've structured my way of attaining love in life.
Okay, so you keep coming back to expectations. That's a key, right? That if I have expectations, that I'm going to be in sorrow. And so is it that if I'm in an attaching relationship, I'm going to feel up and it's fluctuating? Is that it? 1 minute I'm up, next minute I'm down. Anyone know that kind of relationship? Just checking, right? Okay. So what about
I can just say, that just about that attachment, I think, because we're all educated to feel that is a normal, loving relationship. But the law says that the more I attach my heart to anyone, I build fear and insecurity in my life, because I fear losing that. The more I attach my heart, I fear losing the source of love, because that nutrient is so essential to me existing. And that's where, and we don't realize then, the more dependent I am and the more expectations, it's quite destructive in my relationship. And so the relationship goes bad. I don't see it, but I don't see it's my dependence, which is really creating so much fear and anxiety around my relationship with you. And that really makes it a difficult, often puts a lot of pressure on the happiness of that relationship.
Is it ever that one person is attached and the other one isn't? Does that ever happen?
I think so sometimes. And, that's a tricky thing. I think that when one party is deeply attached and the other party less so, but the party that's less so sometimes are more secure in themselves, and they can help that other party sort of, move out of this very, very dependent culture which we've created. And I think it's happening more and more because life is so uncertain at the moment. I hold on more, and the more I hold on, it's almost like I begin to smother the one I love. Unconsciously, I smother them. And then when they move away from me, feeling this is too much, then I start to, it just puts a lot of pressure.
Right.
And I think to have a relationship of love where there's independence is real respect, isn't it? That I allow you to be who you are. I allow you to be an individual. I accept you, as you are, without overlaying how I think you should be. And that really, we don't realize it consciously, but sometimes I think you're there to fulfill my needs in life. So if you change or you're different, then that threatens something within my life. It's all unconscious because but an incredible selfishness and dependence is highly destructive to really what we want. Right. That real nutrient of a regular source of quality love.
So if I'm the person who is not so attached, or maybe not attached at all, and I'm feeling smothered, backing up is the wrong thing because that upsets the other person. What's the right thing to do? What do I do about that?
It's a tricky question, isn't it? I think spiritually, a lot of change happens when we embark on a spiritual practice. And I think when I start to see the other, not so much as my partner, my child, my parent, all this, and see the soul, that actually the reality of life is that we are souls and we're all on a journey. And in life, we come together in this wonderful, supportive, loving connections. But the most inevitable thing is at some point it's going to part.
Right.
no relationship is permanent. And this is one of the biggest challenges for us at the moment. We become sometimes terrified at the loss of the source of love in my life. And that's the beauty of the relationship with God, because what I'm starting to do, at first it may not seem so real, but as it becomes a real, living, natural relationship, I feel less dependent on the other. And I sort of understand that, like I am a soul on a journey, the soul takes birth and rebirth. We come together through our karmic story to connect in life.
Right.
And yet we're going to continue in our own directions. But the one source that's constant in all this change is the relationship with God. And I think that's why when I started with the Brahma Kumaris, I really loved that idea that there is a constant source of love in life, and it's real. It's not just a religious belief, or it's a real living relationship with another living soul, but a slightly different dynamics.
Right. So you're pointing repeatedly to two things: love for the self, self-love, feeling strong and full inside, and love of God, right? Can you talk a little bit about first love of the self and then connect that with love of God, or love by God?
Yeah.
Love from God?
I don't know what everyone feels here, but my sense is that the biggest issue in life today is to have a stable, loving feeling for myself. And I differentiate between self-confidence and self-love. I think we have an amazing amount of confidence to do things. So I can pass exams, I can run companies, I can write books, I can be out there as a real presence in the world. It doesn't mean I like myself at all. And often when we see other people so-called, I don't like the word myself, successful in the world, because it often implies you're well-known and rich. But happening in the world, we seem to think they have self-respect, not necessarily. I remember in Australia, I once gave a meditation course to a billionaire. Such an amazing man on such a spiritual search. You know what he said? His very words were, "I've been a total success out there and a total failure in here." And I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm not happy. I'm not happy." And in fact, his very words were, "The richer I became, the more unhappy I became." And so we sort of differentiate that. And to me, a successful life is to feel comfortable with who you are. But interestingly, what I feel is not about rebuilding first my relationship with me. It's first the relationship with God.
Really?
And
You start with that. Okay.
I feel it's when I feel love from God that I begin to, the whole attitude towards myself begins to change. And for me, if anyone would say to me, out of all the things you've benefited from over the years of meditation, definitely the healing of the relationship with me, where my whole vision on myself, to me, there's a huge relationship between ego and love. And fundamentally, the more ego, the less lovable and loving I am. And when I think I'm a temporary body, no matter how simple, quiet, and gentle I may be on the surface, I have ego. And the more ego, the less I receive love from life. All of us know when we see a newborn child, the innocence of that child, the authenticity, the purity, it attracts love, doesn't it? It attracts love. And I think in the same way that when you start to have a relationship with God, you start to find that part in yourself, which is innocent, authentic, and lovable. So you can't, sometimes we think, yes, I should love myself. It's hypey. I must love myself. But I don't, because I see a whole lot of critical stuff. It's very superficial. Right. But it's like when we understand the journey of the soul, that the original state is pure, clean, innocent, and totally lovable. And in a way, it's accessing that part of me, which I feel God loves that part. I feel that. And I become more childlike, and I can, in a sense,
Right.
have more loving
Okay,
feeling.
but what if some of us don't really have yet the experience of God's love? Maybe we have faith, or maybe we have deep interest, but we don't yet have the experience of God's love. Does that mean no self-love is possible? Are we out in the cold until we can figure that out?
No, not at all, because I think maybe it's on both sides. I feel sometimes I think there's 3 personalities inside all of us. And 2 of the personalities are born out of identifying that I'm a temporary body and all the labels of the body. And the first personality I call the eye of arrogance, or the eye of superiority. And this eye gets its whole sense of self from the labels, the temporary labels of my body. And when it's ruling my inner system, I compare with others. And I think I am better, I know more, I am right. And when it comes into my feelings, when my ego rules my inner system, I feel so easily sensitive, insulted, disrespected, not valued. And I feel when those feelings are coming, know that the false eye is ruling my inner system, and it's not lovable. I can't love myself. Or the flip side is the ego of inferiority, which is the ego that says, you compare with others and you feel others are better, others know more, others don't love me, others don't value me. When this is ruling in my inner system, there's a hopelessness about myself and my life, inadequacy, unworthiness, I would say depression. In psychology, depression is like a sadness that my dream in life hasn't been fulfilled, to be loved and valued. But in spirituality, depression is like a mourning for the loss of my true identity. I'm living my life, but really, who am I? And that one's not lovable. And we're trying to love these temporary identities, which are ego-based. But when I start to love myself as the permanent soul, really have a loving relationship with myself as the soul, what I have found for myself when I began to practice that, it was, I just felt I came home to a sweet place inside where I felt really comfortable. And I stopped the pressure, the internal pressure to be something, to prove yourself, to be out there, to be noticed. The culture we live in, you have to have an image, you have to be seen, you have to be noticed, you have to be something. And yet just feeling absolutely comfortable in your own skin, that I'm actually an eternal soul. And I feel automatically that starts to heal the relationship. So perhaps it's easier to say, it's both. It's the relationship with myself, not as a temporary body, but as a soul. And a relationship with God are the elements that start to heal this very, very deeply damaged relationship with self. My own feeling is the madness in our world at the moment, the increasing insanity that seems to be ruling our planet. Why? Because there's 8 billion souls out there with a dysfunctional relationship with self. And so when that's there, it's just flowing into our politics, flowing into the economy, it's just flowing through every part of life. And unfortunately, until that changes, I don't think we're going to see any change out there, no matter how many trillions of dollars governments spend. And, they just, whatever is a problem, just throw $1 trillion. Like, I haven't seen much change. In fact, it seems to get worse as far as I can see.
Okay, so if I am in a family setting or a work setting, and those difficult people are there with me, and they're not aware of themselves as spiritual beings, and they're not aware of God's love for them or their love for God, what do I do about those difficult people? They're not very lovable, and I'm here trying to be loving. What do I have to do inside so that makes a difference?
Resign.
From the family?
I'm joking.
This will change. We talk about the great resignation.
Yeah, mass resignations. It's inevitable. But you see, because of my vulnerability, I'm totally and utterly vulnerable to others, their attitudes, their behaviors, their words, and we put it all on them. And it's inevitable. We live in a world with different personalities and difficult,
right? I mean,
difficult
people that are hard to love. Right?
Yeah.
Some people really hard to love.
And this is where I think one of the things I've learned in the BKs, which I deeply value, is that true love comes with detachment. And to be truly loving, you have to be detached. Meaning that when you're detached from people, you can love them when they're good, but you maintain love even when they're fluctuating or they're not so easy. And honestly, if you want to change someone, people are so used to when they're in a good mood and you're loving, they expect a response. But if they're being difficult and they know they're being difficult and you maintain a loving, that does wonders in people's lives. And I think a lot of us have experienced in the Brahma Kumaris, the elder sisters, who we call the daddies, means like elder sister, were absolutely phenomenal in this department. You know this well, Judy, that they maintain love for people no matter what. And I think that builds up it helps people really change. And that's where detachment in English is a very unfortunate word, because I think it implies being aloof. It implies being cut off, uncaring, a whole lot of stuff. But actually, true detachment can only come with love. And I often call it detached involvement. You remain close, but you remain involved with life, but you're not drinking in all the stuff, the words, the behaviors, the reactions. And maybe that sounds a bit, wow, it sounds great, but too hard to do. Actually, it's an automatic byproduct of a relationship with God and a relationship with my true self. You become less vulnerable to all the nuances of personalities and behaviors and this sort of, it's
okay. So
a tangible thing.
I want to double click on this because you're talking about a very, very beautiful, but perhaps inaccessible thing here. So there's someone in front of me who's behaving badly, right? They're selfish and they're acting out. And what is the inner stance that I take? What am I doing inside so that when I look at that person behaving badly, I don't think all those thoughts like, come on, stop it, get your act together, right? How do I not go there? And instead I have loving detachment. What's the inner awareness that I'm holding to do that?
The inner process.
Yeah. I mean, I may or may not be tapped into that love of God yet, but I'm trying to be in the right space with these difficult people.
I feel to have a lens of truth. Okay. Rather than looking through a lens of emotion and that consciousness of body consciousness, because when you look through a lens of truth, you can look at the behavior and that will affect you. Mm. But when you look through the real lens of truth, you can see the soul. And the soul that you're in front of is going through something difficult. Mm. How many times have you been in the workplace or at home and somebody has been really rude and difficult, and some of they say things to you very abruptly and rudely, and you, oh goodness, what's going on here? And yet, if you sit down with them, they're having a really tough time at home. It's actually nothing to do with you. Mm. You're just the individual in front of them. And we are so programmed. Sometimes I think most of us have a PhD in taking sorrow from other people. who's done the PhD in taking sorrow from others? Really, we're just so expert at it, and yet it's nothing to do with me. And I've experienced this many times. So when you see beyond the behaviors and you see this poor individual is under the influence of their beliefs about their life, a whole lot of factors that they may be suffering, and you're just the individual in front of them at that moment. Actually, it is possible even to be merciful at that time. It is possible. Now, I know all of this takes effort, but I would say since I began to meditate, one of the other main things beside rebuilding a sort of a more solid relationship with myself is feeling more uninfluenced by people. And it's such a freedom. You can actually love them more, love everyone, when you don't feel so impinged by and even if someone has an opinion that just in the past used to press a massive button inside you about politics or the state of the world, and can you really think like that or believe like that? Right. We're all different. It's it's in a way, one of the learnings here is that life is really a drama. We're all actors, and this actor has a right. Everyone has a right to believe what they need to believe. And when I have self-respect, it's actually quite easy to accept that people are different. And I find it really fascinating just how our perception is so different. Because when you're with people and you see a scene and you interpret it in a way and you think your sister, your mum, your dad, your friend will be seeing it like you, that they see it so differently. I had an older brother, and his wife often used to tell me they used to go to dinner parties together. They had a big circle of friends. And on the way back from the dinner party, my sister-in-law loved to debrief on the dynamics. I think you know what I mean. And my brother's perception was so different. She always said, my brother's name's Richard. Richard, did we go to the same dinner party? Because his perception of the dynamics is so different. How many of you have been in a meeting at work and you come out and think, oh, that was the worst meeting ever? And another person said, wasn't that great? And you think, what? This is our framework, is how we perceive things depends on a whole multi-layered set of factors in our thinking. The more my thinking is soul conscious, connected to God, actually I'm seeing with more clarity all the time.
Okay, so you're saying that it starts with love of the self, right? True love of the self. And it moves to love of God, love from God, or it could be reverse, starts with love of God and then love of the self.
I think more that side.
More love of God,
yeah.
Then love of the self.
Yeah.
Now that I'm in the true self, now if someone behaves badly or they're difficult or they're attaching, I have this compassion and this mercy, and I begin to shift those relationships. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And I think that, because often we think, oh, I want to have a better relationship with you, so I work on my relationship with you. But actually, if I work on my relationship with God and myself, the automatic byproduct, none of these things happen overnight. And yet I think the more I build on healing, and that's the right word, the relationship with me, and really exploring a real sense of love from God, not just a devotional belief in God, big difference.
Just say a little about the difference.
Well, I think a lot of us have this deep religious belief in a higher power, and that faith gives a little bit of strength in life, there's no doubt. But what we're talking about here is really becoming soul conscious. You know, the soul sits in the center of the forehead. The soul, the thoughts of the soul are instant. The thoughts have an energy. and you absolutely connect with another living being, another soul. So there's a sense of connectedness in that way that's beyond the human ups and downs, you know, doing actions, reaping the fruit of actions, in a sense, but I'm connecting with a conscious, real, living being. And just like we love someone deeply, but we love them through the sense organs, and then we see the sense organs. So all our relationships now are a human body to human body. There's now a soul that never has a human body. So it's a different dynamic that I'm sort of exploring, and it takes time. But when I really get there, when I become more soul conscious, there's this, no matter what is happening in my life with relationships, with family and others, this is always there. It's like the anchor of my life. And it's not just a religious devotion, it's a real living connection and relationship.
Okay, so I want to explore one more area. I mean, he's asking a lot, isn't he? He's asking that we experience God's love and experience our true self. But you did say that babies are naturally loving, so there's hope for us, right? If we can do it right out of the gate. But the last area I want to explore, and is what is the greatest act of true love? And I want you to reflect on this from the individual perspective and the big global world perspective. I'm thinking today, as many of you are, of 9/11 and all of the firefighters and the first responders. And I know, Michael, I've spotted you in the audience. I know it's in your heart too. There are a lot of heroes in the world, right? That kind of hero. And then there's also, everyday ones. Thinking of Nelson Mandela, who we talked about this week. There are some of those acts of love, Gandhi. I mean, these are acts of love, right? So there are the ones people write about in history, and then there are the more quiet acts of love. So what is, would you say, the greatest act of true love?
To forgive. To forgive. Because I think that everyone in this room has at some point been the brunt of injustice, so many things that happen in all our lives. And I think one of the greatest tragedies, if I can use that word, is me. And if I can use the word, my ego holds on to that and identifies that you have done this. And all I do is build in so much anger and bitterness into my being. I've been with the BKs now for 47 years, and I've taught many courses in meditation. And so many times I've met people who 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years ago, something's happened that has just really been terrible. There's absolutely no doubt about what happened was a shocking thing. But if I revise it every day in my head, what does it do to the quality of my life?
Right.
And I think one of the greatest acts of love is to forgive, is to let go. And in a sense, forgiveness to me is letting go all the conditions in my mind that stop me being loving and happy. Because each time I can't forgive, I suppress my ability to love, which is what makes me healthy in life. And then some people, and I fully appreciate, say, well, if I forgive, it's like saying what you did was okay, when it's absolutely contrary to my principles and values in life.
Right.
But I think it's absolutely possible to say, I did not agree with what happened. I do not agree with your behavior. But for me, I'm going to release myself from this self-inflicted pain,
Right.
self-inflicted pain in a way of just holding on. And I really feel that that is something that when my experience is that really, when I meditate and I feel loved by God, you can do it. You just feel, why am I holding on to this stuff? What's holding on to it? And really, when you go deep, it's a pride.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pride that, you know,
Right.
you have to bow down in front of me, or you have to do something. But actually, you free yourself. And that is, to me, one of the greatest acts. I mean, there's many great acts of love, but to genuinely forgive, and even, I think, you know, compassion, beautiful quality. And a lot of us have compassion for the poor and the underprivileged and all those sort of people. But when it comes to the powerful and the rich and the
No compassion for them.
no compassion, but actually I think we need compassion for
them.
everyone. We
Yeah.
really do, because I'll tell you one story that really touched me, and then I'll stop. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You know, I was in Sydney once, and the Dalai Lama was there, and there was a huge audience meeting him. And there's a very huge Chinese community in Sydney after Tiananmen Square. Huge number of young students moved to Australia. And one of them, he was talking about compassion. And he said, this student asked Dalai Lama, do you have compassion for the Chinese? Because if you know the history of Tibet, really, it's shocking what has happened there. It's really horrible. And then Dalai Lama said, I do. And this young man said, I don't believe you. You know, our country has absolutely raped, pillaged, and destroyed your country. And the Dalai Lama says, I do. And he said, how? And he said an interesting answer. He said, I feel compassion because I know from the law of karma, when you do those actions, you're building suffering into your future. And I have compassion for those. So
Yeah.
it was a very interesting answer. And he said, I could feel that he genuinely had compassion.
Right.
So
That's beautiful.
very interesting.
So coming out to all of you, so Charlie's raised all kinds of interesting things here around forgiveness and compassion and difficult people and self-love. And so we have time for some questions from you or comments. Or great.
Om Shanti, Brother Charlie. Sister Judy, thank you. My question is, we talked about self-love, and that's a phrase I'm hearing a lot during the COVID times, more so now. Self-love, self-care. And in the context of perceptions, where does the line for self-love, self-care, and selfishness starts? I feel like, in the people sometimes perceive self-love, self-care to be selfishness, and then there's the ego involved as well. For me and for others, what do we do? How do you not be selfish in loving yourself and taking care of yourself?
I think that all of us have an innate, it's a part of the DNA of being a human being, is to want to support and love others. But if I can't support and love myself, I'm going to be fairly ineffective. And really, the qualification to support and love consistently my family, my friends, people around me, is to look after myself. And what is happening today is we don't look after ourselves. And so my capacity to support them is very limited. And often more than that, I'm totally affected by them. And that's why I think there's our three states of being. In a sense, when I think I'm the temporary body, I'm often in the zone of the ego of superiority or the ego of inferiority, which is highly judgmental, critical, reactive, all that. So loving myself as the eternal soul is really, that's sort of tapping into not a selfish love, but a real, fundamentally just a real relationship with who I intrinsically am. I'm actually not. I'm not even a gender or a nationality. You think how deep that programming is. Every thought I think as a male or a female or someone from the East or someone from the West, all this stuff, that's all contrived based on what I've perception. I'm actually a soul and you are a soul too. And I think it just needs practice. We know this stuff and we believe it, but actually what we're learning here is to begin to practice it so it becomes who I am. And I think that once again, when we love God, you're full. So your love is naturally selfless. When you're empty, there's always some desire. And if I'm feeling disappointed in people, it's because I'm loving you because I want you to do it back. Well, maybe that's fairly normal and human to a certain extent, but I think we really can reach a point where we offer love and we offer respect. But if it doesn't come back, it's not a big drama in life. It's not a big deal in life.
Other thoughts, other questions? Puzzles, love puzzles.
Thank you so much for all these insights. I really was interested in you talking about love as nutrition, that, we need this to nurture our spiritual growth. Can you say something about romantic love? In particular, I notice that especially American culture seems to put a very high value on that. It's the basis of the marriage relationship, or at least it gets it started. And our media, our advertising tends to try to convince us that the romantic relationship is the one that you really are achieving or reaching out for. And yet, on the other hand, the great literature and movies and other things show a lot of problems with romantic love. It seems to be the source of a lot of sorrow and heartbreak. So can you talk a little bit about why that is?
Yes, I don't know whether I'm an expert in the area, but yeah, I think it's in all cultures, but with different flavors, and the way I sometimes see the culture that we're all brought up in today is that there's someone out there who's going to fulfill all your needs and everything. And sometimes I think of relationships as an iceberg, not because they're cold, but an iceberg is only 10% above the water and 90% below. And because of the superficiality of life today, the incredible superficiality, we see the 10%, how people look, how attractive they are physically, their career, their this. And I fall in love with the romantic part is with 10% of the being I'm maybe going to spend the rest of my life with. And so after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, as the 90% starts to emerge, whoa, I'm out of here. And I blame them, but it's me. I was so superficial and naive right at the beginning because all of us now carry our baggage from the past. And ultimately, all the superficial stuff of their physical attractiveness, their family background, all this sort of stuff will disappear. And you are living with another soul and their personality, their nature. And that's where I think, there was a book once I read something about this, the history of love. I don't know how, anyway, this person's perception is that that romantic love lasts for about 6 months. That's sort of head over heels where you, and I would say it's not really love, it's infatuation. You become infatuated with someone. And so you are blind in that state. You are completely blind. You only see one aspect. And as the blindness removes, and then you really feel you've deceived me, but they haven't. I've been, because I was so perhaps innocent, and perhaps this is the nature of love today. And once again, why I think really, as what spirituality is doing is really rebuilding the foundation of relationship, that actually I'm a soul and you're a soul. And once that connectedness is there, I think you're building on a platform. It's like a deep friendship. But really, I think, as Judy touched on at the beginning, the great destroyer of relationship is dependence. The more we become dependent, it creates so many issues in relationships. And today, because we feel so empty, we become so dependent so quickly, and we don't see how that is so destructive and what I really am looking for. So romantic love is a bit of an issue in the world today, I would say. And that iceberg thing, I think, and sometimes I've met people who've fallen in love, got married, and it hasn't worked. They just go straight back into it again. And again, it doesn't work. And straight back into it again. And then that is so destroying that and deep down, I feel I can't sustain a loving relationship with another person. It's a naive approach. And that's where really I feel what spirituality says, heal the relationship with the self, have a close relationship with God before you even think of really, because then I think the framework of your thinking is more real and honest. You have a lens that's going to see more reality, and you have a natural, you're loving, but you're not so dependent on the other for all your needs in life. If you start a relationship thinking you're going to provide all my needs in life, that is a recipe for disaster, unfortunately. Maybe very, very occasionally it works out, but I would say very, very rarely.
Okay, we'll take another one, and then we'll set up a little bit of conversation in pairs. Is it on?
Om Shanti, and thank you so much, Brother Charlie, and thank you, Sister Judy. In the context of forgiveness that you talked about, I was thinking about it as you were talking, that we talk about forgiveness, we talk about detachment, and we talk about, you said the forgiveness is the biggest act of love, right? So why is it easy to forgive, say, our kids, right? It's easy to forgive our kids, it's easy to love, even though you would think that we are more attached to them. But sometimes it's hard to forgive others. Same person, you can forgive some people easily, which tells you that you innately have that forgiveness in you. And then it's harder to forgive others.
Yes, I call it selective forgiveness. We're all like that. It's amazing. And even sometimes with your siblings, you can forgive one really easy and the other. This is very deep, actually, because it's to do with my karmic connection with each individual. Because we have a sort of a karmic dynamic with every individual. And some of them, I don't know, they behave in a certain way. You even laugh and let it go. Another one behaves in a similar way, and I really, so there's something deeper working. And one of the fascinating things about human relationships is this pinning of the karmic story. And that's where, just like we're talking about romantic love, for me, I would say if you feel absolutely drawn to another person deeply, I would say be very, very careful. We think it's love. It's not. It's this big karmic infatuation. And they're often the ones that just flip over to the other side dramatically, because sometimes I think in our karmic stories, it's like mostly good, 75, 80% good from the past, but there's a little bit. And so sometimes you get to know it goes well, then you go through a few rough times, but it sorts itself out. But some are the other way, not many, but where it's sort of 20% good and 80% difficult. And so that's where, you know, once again, I think with spirituality, you have a lens to understand all this stuff. You have a context to understand why some relationships just are loving from day one and they remain like that. Some are loving and then they just go completely the other way and they remain like that. And some are loving and then they go through their difficult period and they come back into a sustainable. It helps you understand all these sorts of things, that it's a lot to do with our karmic background, our karmic story in a sense. Yeah.
So, Gurinder, I'd like to hold the question, and if Claudia wants to do a little bit of engagement with you, but we'll come back to your question.
Thank you both. I think that's very thought and heart-provoking. What we'd like to do is now invite you all to engage in a little bit of a conversation with each other. So we've got a couple of questions here, and we'll give you about 15 minutes. And given we'd like you just to turn to the person next to you, you're going to pair up and maybe perhaps turn the way to somebody new, if that's possible. And I will give you a gentle reminder about 7 minutes in to say this is a good time to hear from the other person. So maybe this is an opportunity for you to practice really deep presence and listening to one person, and then you switch. And you can decide if you want to do 2 rounds, or you can listen to one answering both questions, and then the next person goes. So here are the questions, exploring love. Think of one relationship, one that gives happiness. That could be an exchange, could be with a family member, could be with a friend or colleague or an acquaintance. But just think of one relationship that pops in your mind, and then share what it is about that relationship. Identify what are those qualities that really do contribute to the relationship bringing joy or happiness. And then the second question is next, consider a relationship that you wish could be better. And think about what is it that maybe you've heard today or something that's kind of clicked for you. This is an opportunity to socialize it. What would help shift that relationship? And underneath that, what is that? What can I do to help shift that relationship? So again, just turn to your neighbor. And you again will have these questions. So think of one that gives happiness, and the next one could be better. And what would it be that could shift that relationship? And I will give you a halfway mark. So we're at the halfway mark. So just make sure the other person's had a chance to share. Okay. We'll have about another minute, just another minute or so. Okay.
Okay. You'll respond. Yeah. We'll kind of. Yeah, but you'll primarily respond. Yeah, fine. I could tell. No, I was really. I had never thought. You know, we had a bit of a feeling here when Sean did that. When Sean did that in the band, we had a bit of a feeling.
So I'm going to invite you all to come back. And let's just take a moment to pause. We've had lots of good conversation. And let's just come back to the center of our own being, our own breath. Great, thank you. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to move this out of the way, but we'd love to hear from you. Anything that you want to share, and if you still have questions, you can ask questions.
So yes, did your conversations about either the best relationship, got a little bit of a feedback here, either your best relationships or the ones that need a little help, did that bring up anything for you? Any good comments, questions, insights? Yes, Colleen. Yes. Susan.
Thank you so much. So I have a question for Brother Charlie. Is there a process to forgiveness?
Do you want to collect a few and then answer, or you want to take each one?
I think
Go ahead and take that.
my memory is such
Your
that
memory is not good. No problem. Is there a process to forgiveness? Thank you, Colleen.
I think there is a real process. And one of them, I think the first step is the realization, do I want to continue my life bitter and angry and hurt? Is that how I want to live my life? It's a deep question, actually. And I think that's the first step of the process. Maybe the second step is really, thinking, do I want, how do I really repair this relationship? And to reach out to the other party. But I can be honest. I really think I can say that what you did really had this impact on me. This is how I've been feeling, but I've decided I want to move on. I want peace and healing in my life. So it's not like you're saying what you did was okay, when sometimes it's absolutely antithesis of the values and principles you have in life. So you want to let go your bitterness, you want to reach out to the other party, and then, but I feel the real method then is to feel that love from God. And that gives you, I suppose, the courage and the humility, because sometimes it needs an incredible amount of humility to let go something that I've maybe held inside for a long time, to really say, yes, I want to move forward. But to me, as I was saying, that when I really feel deeply loved by God, it feels easy. What's the point in me holding on to this? And I think that's probably the key ingredient to make you act on it. Because to me, it's one of the greatest acts of love for yourself, to forgive and move on. Otherwise, you live in the past. This happened. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I think one of our greatest dependencies is attachment to you've done this to me, you've said this to me, this has happened. And that you cannot grow if you live in that story, because when I understand the law of karma, we all have some of these things. And what have I done to other people? I've got my own story of how I've responded and reacted too. So it's not just forgiving others. Often the first step is to forgive myself, the way I've behaved, and mainly what I've done to other people too. And I was sharing this somewhere in the last few days that I have a friend in Sydney who was saying that he wanted to heal a relationship that had broken, a friend, and kept reaching out to this friend and saying, let's heal, let's get on, let's let the past go, let's forgive. And his friend wouldn't respond. I won't go into the detail. And he just wouldn't responding, even when he went to third parties to try to talk to his friend. He wanted to get it over. And when he was really honest with himself, he said, I was saying to my friend, let's forgive, let's move on, let's let go. And yet deep inside, he still held the thought, I was right and you were wrong. And he said that when he let go, he worked on that thought, the other party started to respond. And I think that's, ego, how deep is ego, and pride, and sometimes a spiritual life is letting go my ego about the fact that I was right and you're the party that was wrong. Let's get over it. Let's be friends, but you were wrong. It doesn't work. It doesn't really work.
So we had, is that okay, Colleen? That help? Okay, with Susan Cookley and then Tadisha. Susan, you put your hand, Susan. Show her that. Oh.
Can you hear me?
Sure.
We were discussing what a good friendship, a good relationship, what lends to that. And we decided that humor and humility were essential. Now, how do we find that when we're troubled and some of us don't know that way?
You know, one way, when you're soul conscious, there's a natural humility. In a sense, when you're soul conscious, you have self-respect. The expression of self-respect is humility. And that's where, once again, in a way, it's not about focusing on the relationship, it's focusing on me and how I need to be. And the more I'm humble, and I couldn't agree more, humor is such an important part. That lightness of being, that beautiful lightness of being, where you know, sometimes we get so intense and one little issue from the other party and we sort of really react. And I think just that lightness, and what I've learned in the BK's incredible lesson for me is good wishes and pure feelings. You know, offer. That's like, today I use the language like the perfume of your mind. That perfume, when you can create it with quality thoughts of love, respect, care, compassion, kindness, is a perfume that can almost resolve 90% of situations. When I really, but how do I get it? Once again, I think when you feel loved by God and close, the perfume of the mind is a natural consequence. And that perfume can, even if it doesn't resolve things, it sort of softens things that could become quite intense. I'm a great believer 90% of relationship is your subtle thinking. It's not about speaking, and it's your face and your vibes that really, you know, the face is the expression of the soul. You can see the state of the other through the body language of the face. We all do it unconsciously or consciously. Yeah, so humility and humor, I think, are great.
Yeah. I just want to say we do have a bunch of people on Zoom. And this is one comment that Jesus said in the Course of Miracles, that forgiveness means you understand the other person doesn't realize what they're doing, even if they seem they do.
Yeah, that's so true.
And then another question, which may have gotten answered, but it's, I'm making a lot of effort in relationship, but not getting the love I need. What to do?
I think that must be one of the most common questions in life. You know, to go sort of a bit deeper on that question, I think we put amazing pressure on people to love them to love me. And we have this memory. And I was also sharing, and what clicked for me once was listening to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, whom a lot of you know, who used to talk a lot about grief and how all of us have this well of grief inside from the past. So when we lose a loved one or a relationship breaks down, we lose a friendship, that grief, that sadness is so powerful. Just this real sadness, this sense of aloneness and loss and emptiness. And she always used to say that that's not the real grief. The real grief is that we have known perfect love. We have known, it's in our memory track somewhere, because that's the relationship with God. And I feel that there's a love that God can give that we'll never get from any human being. There's a purity of love. The thing is that we wrap it up in all this religiousness and ritual. And so a lot of us, including me, that's not my scene. I just couldn't relate to all that stuff. But when I sort of remove all the religiousness and there's actually a real living being and the lover of the soul, that's really the love that I've always been looking for, which I don't think any human being can ultimately fulfill. And so I think when I get that love, I lessen my expectations. And that's what we're exploring here. And it doesn't happen overnight, I realize, but that's the love that the soul is really looking for. Because I think we can live even with loving people and never, ever feel they love me enough. Or at times, When I feel I need it, they don't offer it. But it's me, actually. And if I have the honesty to say that I'm the one that needs to look, because I don't think any human being will, or maybe sometimes it does happen. Some people feel really fulfilled in their relationships, but it's fairly rare, I would say, fairly rare. And so that disappointment. And sometimes we have this sort of, I don't know, we're so naive sometimes, I think. We sort of expect that the Prince Charming or the Princess Charming is going to walk in the door and fulfill everything. I don't know. I don't think so. There's lovely people around, but everyone today is struggling with their own stuff. And that's a part of the package we get. And that's why really we see this as a time to absolutely make the prime relationship in life with the divine, with God. And when that's there, I think it heals on a level that nothing else can. And it even helps me, when that relationship is strong, deal with all the personalities, the opinions, the attitudes, the behaviors that often we find difficult with dealing with others.
Tisha had her hand up, and then I know.
Yeah.
Right here. Put your hand up again. Where are you going?
Shanti, brother, I've heard you speak online, so I was very excited to come today to see you in person. So every single, so much of what you said has resonated so much. And two questions. You mentioned your friend with the begging for forgiveness with his other friend, and you said that he realized he had to work with the ego to recognize that he hadn't done. What is the work with the ego? How do you do that? What is that? What does that mean?
Well, one of the greatest manifestations of ego is I am right. My perception of what's going on is the right perception. But like I was saying with my brother and his wife, they had a really good marriage. If we talk about it, they were really close. My brother passed away. But, their perception of everything, your perception is like a filter based on your past, your present experience, your mood, your karmic story. There's a whole lot of filters that how you see reality. And when your self-respect is low, it's like you're wearing sunglasses. It's completely distorting your sense of reality. So when your self-respect is low and someone just speaks to you normally, hi, how are you going? Why are you speaking to me like that? I'm convinced they're speaking down to me, but it's actually my self-respect, lack of it, deceiving me. So because of my lack of spirituality, my lack of self, it's distorting. And then I sort of see relationships as a battleground, just this permanent battleground. But I don't realize it's me and really what I love about spirituality is says, I am responsible for how I feel. And until I have the courage to absolutely say that is the truth of life, people will be rude, people will be difficult, but I always have a choice, how I respond. And the more I take responsibility, relationships will definitely improve. And in one sense, and maybe a little bit theoretical, that when you're body conscious, your ego will keep distorting, whether the ego of superiority, but usually the ego of inferiority is much more powerful. When you're soul conscious, you're much closer to being egoless because you're a soul. You're not having the ego of your family, your culture, your gender, your education, your nationality. All of this stuff distorts reality. And in a sense, the more you look through the lens of soul consciousness, you're seeing life in a more real way, not distorted by all my body conscious perceptions. Yeah. So it's.
I realized, Gurinder, I had told you we'd come back to you and I didn't. Do you still have your question or thought or whatever? Okay, can you take a mic too, Gurinder? Bye.
It's kind of a unique question. You say dependency is wrong, okay, in the love relationship. I have developed my relationship with Baba. In the evening, I talk to him. In the morning, I talk to him. And I'm totally dependent on him. And now, one day, I did not find he was with me in Amritwela. I was confused. Second day, again, that happened. I was a little bit angry. Third day, same happened. I was very mad with him and myself. And fourth day, he appeared, okay? And it was right. Now, that dependency is wrong or right? How do you analyze that? Thank you.
That is a different question. There's no doubt about it. I would say dependency on God is like a legal dependency, so to speak, because it's not really a dependency because, you know, when you're relating a soul, you're always existing, so is God. But in a sense, we're sort of still having an expectation. God is always present. God is always loving. God is always giving. So why in those few moments, those few days, couldn't you ask? It's not your dependency. There was something in your thinking that removed you from access to that love. And sometimes I think, what is meditation? It's allowing yourself to be loved by God. What is knowledge? Observing what is blocking that. That's knowledge. If I'm in front of the love I've always looked for, the lover I've always wanted, and I can't taste it, then what is it in me? And usually it's a sense of unworthiness, a sense of feeling low. And, you know, my impression of religion over many lifetimes is we've gone into all the religious institutions, whatever background they are. We pray to this divine, high, elevated, pure being. You're so great and I'm so low. I'm so this, I'm impure. I've reinforced this profound sense of inferiority. That was the thing that was stopping you. So it's not really your dependence. It's a sense, sometimes we do a small action which is inaccurate, not really accurate. And I unconsciously feel bad about myself. I can't access God at that time. So it's more, and this is really seeing what is it in me that blocks that relationship. Because the more I remove that sense of, lack of self-respect, inferiority, unworthiness, not feeling good, that's such a big journey for most. It's so deep, this lack of ability to love the self in a consistent way is the biggest issue for human beings, I believe personally. And that's the seed of majority of obstacles, because it affects my relationships. It affects my performance at work. It even affects my physical health as well. Everything in my life is impacted by this dysfunctional relationship with self.
Charlie, I have one more question from online. It was actually posed early on. Is when you suddenly fall out of love, is that body consciousness?
Yes and no. Is that a good answer?
That's an excellent answer, Charlie.
It is in one sense, because on a soul conscious level, I think when I'm in a state of self-respect, I can maintain love for people. But I don't know, sometimes in life, the dynamics of life changes, and we move on from one thing to another. But I really do feel that when you are in your true state of self-respect and soul consciousness, you can express loving feelings for everyone. I really You know, once it was defined in the Brahma Kumaris, what is perfection? To have loving feelings for everyone. And I think if you can live in this world and be loving to those who are sweet, but loving to those who aren't sweet, you know, be loving to those who cooperate with you and loving to those who don't do anything to help you, you know, and in a way, how can I be like that? It sounds a bit pie in the sky stuff. Once again, I think we witnessed it, didn't we, Judy, with like Daddy Prakashmani, Daddy Janki. They were just, because when the relationship with God is so great, and that's what we're on about here, you know, really having such a strong relationship, it is possible to be like that. And you don't feel influenced. Even I once saw Daddy Prakashmani, who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris for 38 years. She was such a loving being. It was just a part of, and I saw someone so rude to her. It just went, I could tell on her face, it didn't impinge her, and she just moved on. She didn't accept. You know, often we accept disrespect. We accept all that stuff. We take it to heart and we think, how could they be like that? But she just decided, I'll keep giving. And if you don't want or whatever, what can I do about it? We know this is a high stage. We're all on the journey. But I think deep down, we know that we have the capacity to move in that direction. To me, that's the most beautiful human life, is to love God, be loved by God, and then express that for everyone. And especially living in this world where people are going through so much, you know. We can be so judgmental, but to me, mercy is suspending judgment and offering love. I could be so judgmental about almost everybody today because we all have a whole range of weaknesses, but when we suspend it and we are loving, we feel so much better about the person we are. We feel in the zone when we're like that.
To love God, to be loved by God, and to share that with everyone. That's beautiful. Join me in thanking Brother Charlie for coming and hanging out with us on the top of the mountain. Charlie, this has been a joy. Thank you very, very much for being with us and answering all these tough questions.
Thank you.
And I think Claudia has a couple of announcements, and then you can't get away without Toli and blessings, right? So we'll finish with Toli and blessings.
So just so we all know, information about events can be found on our website. We're trying to do more of these kind of events, especially when we have wonderful others coming from other places to visit us. There's a sign-up sheet with Elizabeth, or there was one, I think, on this table where Jan's sitting, if you want to be on our mailing list. There's online Raja Yoga meditation course that's going to start every month. The next one will start tomorrow, that's September 12th, from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Again, that's online. So if you're interested in that Raja Yoga meditation course, have a look online. We do have an in-person retreat for healthcare professionals, which is a Thursday through Sunday here at Peace Village on the 29th of September to the 2nd of October for healthcare officials. Friday, 29th? 30th, okay. All righty, the 30th, Friday through Sunday. More information when you register. We also have World Meditation Hour every third Sunday of the month. The next one is on the 18th of September. And there is a talk that's given online at 5:30, and then actual meditation starts at 6:30. And we're soon planning an open house in person again. We did one last month at the 2nd of October, and that will be, the open house will be between 2 and 5 p.m. And for those of you who are new, what Toli and blessings are really, you get to come up in front of these wonderful beings with so much love. A Toli is a little sweet for your mouth, a little candy, so to speak, sweet. And a blessing is a little card you get. How I think about it is it's God speaking to your heart. And if you want to take us into a little meditation as a start.
You want to
that'd be good.
lead us in a meditation, and then we'll do the.
Hello, yes. So just for a couple of minutes, we'll keep it a little bit brief. If we can put down phones and books and whatever, and if you feel comfortable to keep your eyes open and gently rest your vision towards the image of light in front. Just let me sit quietly and with gentle determination. Follow the thoughts suggested. How do I treat myself? What sort of relationship do I have with me? Am I kind? Am I loving? Am I forgiving? Or do I sometimes speak harshly to myself? Put myself down and tell myself, you're no good, you're hopeless. Because to have loving relationships with everyone around me, it begins with a loving relationship with me. And when that relationship is healed, it flows into my relationships with all others. Just visualize yourself as the infinitesimal spark of eternal life energy, just sitting lightly in the front of the brain. I, the eternal soul. I have lived before this body, and I will continue after this body. I've been searching for love for a long time, a quality of love in my family, my friends, my community. But often it hasn't fulfilled the real love I've been looking for. But in a natural way, just turn my attention to God as a soul like me, but a pure soul, a totally lovable being, a real being, a conscious being like me, but a soul that doesn't have a body. So when I become so conscious and I remember this lover of the soul, I have permanent access to unlimited love. It's always there. It does take time to learn the dynamics of a soul-to-soul relationship. But this is the lover I've always looked for. And when I feel loved by God, something settles down inside. I feel belonging. I've come home. And the more I feel this love, my self-respect returns. And rather than feeling empty and needy of others' love, I can give love. The law of life says, if you want love, give it. So the more I become loving, I receive the blessings of love from the hearts of everyone around me. Where does it begin? In re-establishing a real loving relationship with the divine, with God. Om Shanti.
Yeah. So before you come up, we want all the Albany students to come and take their Tolian blessing, but stay in your seats after, come back to your seats. And everyone else, please take your Tolian blessings. And then Elizabeth would like you to direct you to come out that door. Okay, for those of you. And Marcela is going to play as well during this time.
here, but that's okay.
Tomorrow you will have space and time.